What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, and today I want to take a look ahead to this 2025 season and focus on a few players who are entering contract years for the New York Giants and looking to be potential extension candidates. These guys who have been competing for the last several years, making a name for themselves, working their way up the depth chart, and establishing themselves as key starters for the Giants, who Big Blue might want to keep around long term. Those are the guys that we're going to go ahead and discuss in today's episode. I've identified three key extension candidates here who I think have a really good chance at earning a new contract with the New York Giants, but I'll also go over the reasons why they could or could not end up earning that contract and go through some honorable mentions towards the end of this episode as well. But I want to go ahead and kick things off here with Micah McFadden. Now, you guys have heard me talk about McFadden quite a bit this offseason, referring to him as a top extension candidate. And I want to make that point once again here now that we are officially 2 weeks away from the start of training camp. I do believe we are less than a week away from the rookies reporting to the building. So an update there for you guys as we look ahead to the horizon and know that football is right around the corner. I believe that the rookies do report next Tuesday. They're in the building, but training camp officially starts 2 weeks from today when all of the veterans and all of the rookies and all of the coaches take the practice field together. So I know it's a little bit of that boring time in the NFL offseason right now. Not a lot going on, but we're in the home stretch right around the corner from padded practices. And of course, it ramps right up into the preseason. And the preseason, as we all know, ramps right up into the regular season. Football will be here before you know it, and I'm really excited. But in the meantime, let's evaluate this Giants roster, and let's go ahead and start with Micah McFadden. As I mentioned, is a player who I believe is a prime extension candidate for the New York Giants. I think when you look at his career progression, year-to-year improvement is what defines Micah McFadden so far, and that's the reason that I believe the Giants should work to get this deal done sooner rather than later. Currently, when you're looking at McFadden, this is a player who in 2022 appeared in all 17 games as a rookie, made 7 starts, finished the year with 2 sacks, 59 combined tackles, and 6 tackles for loss with 2 quarterback hits. And then in year 2, he played a little bit of more of an expanded role. His snap count went from 435 up to 737, and it resulted in 1 sack, 101 combined tackles, and a career high 12 tackles for loss with 6 quarterback hits. He also had an interception that season, and he did have 5 pass breakups. So definitely showed some improvement in coverage in 2023. And then last season, he played the most snaps that he has at any point, a career high. He actually played less snaps, 737, went down to 670, but his snap percentage went up to 75%. This is because he did miss some time due to injuries last season, played in only 14 games, started all of them. As opposed to the 16 games he played the season prior. But even still, playing a more expanded role last season, firmly planting himself into the starting lineup. And like I said, seeing a career progression where his stats have improved every single year. That's more combined tackles per game. That's more sacks, really improved as a pass rusher as well last year. Micah McFadden just gets better every year, and he's only 25 years old. So entering the 4th season of his career, the final year of his contract, still being in his prime, being young and still ascending every single season, that's the exact kind of homegrown talent that the Giants haven't extended in the past, but need to start extending in the future. Because we have had a lot of players that the Giants have allowed to walk in free agency. And oftentimes the comment sections of these episodes is, why did we let that guy leave? He's so much better now that he's on a new team. Why couldn't he have done this here? And oftentimes it is because the Giants aren't patient enough to develop their players, but also they pick and choose sometimes incorrectly which homegrown talents to extend. And a lot of the times they just don't extend these homegrown talents. They leave, go to new teams with new systems, and they flourish elsewhere. I don't want to see that happen with Micah McFadden. I think a former 5th-round pick that you drafted in 2022 who has quickly ascended into the starting lineup and become a building block for your defense is the exact kind of player that as a general manager in Joe Schoen, you want on your resume as an extension. You want him on a second contract to say, hey, I hit on this 5th-round pick years ago, and he is now a piece of our defense that's going to be here for the long term. I think that's important for Joe Schoen, and I think it's important for the Giants defense. We've talked a lot about the lack of continuity in this defense. When you think about how Wink Martindale was here and they had to obviously move on from him and bring in Shane Bowen, and they've had a lot of moving pieces on the defensive line and in the secondary in terms of this guy's starting 1 year and this guy's taking over the next year. McFadden has been here for the last 3 years, has been a starter for the last 2, and has really risen up the ranks as a leader in this defense as well. Just a dependable player. Yes, he's been banged up a little bit in his career, has missed some time due to injuries. He missed a game in 2023. He missed 3 games last season. But relatively speaking, he's a healthy and consistent and dependable player. Is he perfect? No. And I'll talk about some of the concerns in his game in just a second here. But a good, maybe not great player who has gotten better every single season and is still young is the exact kind of player I think the Giants need to extend. Now, what are some of the flaws in his game? And then I'll talk about maybe contract projections here. We all know that Micah McFadden has somewhat of an issue with tackles, like missing tackles at a pretty frequent rate. But I do think it's important to point out and highlight that a lot of the missed tackles that Micah McFadden has come behind the line of scrimmage. And that's a result of him making a great play in the first second of the snap, right? Just shooting the gap, getting into the backfield and charging at the running back and just diving in full speed ahead. Now, he sometimes whizzes by like a missile and doesn't complete the tackle. But what happens as a result is the running back is thrown off his path and course and then runs into a Dexter Lawrence or a Thibodeau or a Burns or some other linebacker who then gets the tackle for loss as a result, though, of McFadden blowing up the play very early. His biggest strength, I think, is his football IQ and his ability to recognize these runs and shoot these gaps very quickly. And while he doesn't always complete the play himself and make the tackle for loss himself, he does set it up so that the play is blown up. It's a little bit of a mess, and somebody can come in, clean it up, and get the tackle for loss for the Giants defense regardless. So I think that's always important to note. People look at the stats. They look at the box stats, right? And they see the missed tackle rate. And sometimes it's, in 2023, it was 17%. In 2024, it was 12%. He had 15 missed tackles last season. It's a pretty high total, but I'd be willing to bet at least 5 to 7 of those came behind the line of scrimmage and resulted in somebody else making the play. Now, even still, I would like to see that number cut down. I think we all would. If that missed tackle rate dips below 10%, I think we're happy. If it's closer to 5%, I think we're thrilled, right? And that's something that Micah McFadden certainly does need to work on. But again, I do think that it is a result of him being in the backfield quite often, more often than not, making plays behind or at the line of scrimmage and, creating opportunities for his teammates to finish the play. So McFadden, where else could he improve? I do think in coverage, he leaves a lot to be desired. Like I said, he was a lot better in 2023, had those 5 pass breakups and an interception, but still surrendered a 74% completion rate, had an 82.8 passer rating against in 2023. That unfortunately went up to 114.4 last season. He surrendered 333 yards last year on an 83% completion rate. So not the best statistics. And his average depth of target against rose from 1.4 to 3.8. So honestly, he did struggle quite a bit in coverage last year, and that's never really been a strength for him. But McFadden isn't a player that you want to necessarily sit down in coverage all the time. And I do think with the Giants having so many defensive backs now that they can rely on, they can run more nickel and dime defensive packages and use McFadden as more of a traditional linebacker who shoots gaps and stops the run in that way, in that disruptive way. But also I think they can use him as a blitzer because I think he's pretty good in that regard. Again, he's got that kind of power and energy to bang heads and just kind of run through offensive linemen. That helps in the running game. That also does help as an additional blitzer from the linebacker spot. So, I really like McFadden. I think he's got a good skill set. Is he a complete package player? Is he, going to make plays for you in coverage and rush the passer and stop the run? Is he going to do all of those things at an elite level? No. Does he do any of them at an elite level? Debatably, no. But he is a good overall player who's dependable, consistently appears in the lineup. Best ability is availability. He's consistently in the lineup and he's consistently making plays. And again, his year-to-year progression, the improvement that he's made every year has earned him a contract extension, in my opinion. But what would that extension look like? Can the Giants afford it? Reminder, they are paying Bobby Okereke $10 million per season. Right now, I believe that Micah McFadden's contract projection is somewhere in the $6 to $8 million range. And I think that's completely affordable for the Giants. And I think that makes sense. Let's imagine that it's a 3-year contract, perhaps at about $24 million, maybe $20 to $24 million in total. I think that makes a lot of sense for a player of this caliber. I think when you look at the cap space and you look at the way the contracts are moving, that does make sense for a really quality linebacker too, who's on the field quite a lot for your defense. So I think that that's an affordable rate for the Giants. But when you look at his stats and progression through the first 3 seasons of his career, if in year 4 of his career he goes for, let's just say, a career year of 120 combined tackles or something of that sort, he could end up seeking the Bobby Okereke contract, and his price tag and value could push closer to that $10 million range. And that's where the Giants might not feel comfortable extending Micah McFadden. If he has a ball out 2025 season, if he puts up 120 plus combined tackles and, 8 tackles for loss or, more than that, if he ends up elevating his market value to that $10 million range, I don't think that the Giants would want to extend him. I think that they would have to roll with Okereke since they already have him at a similar price tag and move on and try and hit on another mid to late round pick at the linebacker spot. But ultimately, I think the Giants should get out ahead of this, be proactive rather than reactive. Don't wait for McFadden to elevate his market value going into the 2026 offseason. Go ahead and extend him now, sooner rather than later. Get him while his price value is still at a reasonable rate, and get him before he elevates that value with a 2025 campaign that is set up to probably be his best, considering he's gotten better every single season. So that's my argument for extending Micah McFadden. Again, think he's consistent, think he's young and ascending, and I also think getting the deal done now will save you money in the long run. So I think the Giants, when all of these players are in the building in the next 2 weeks, they should sit down McFadden and say, hey, we really like the way you've progressed. We think you're a good player. We want you here long term. Let's get you locked into a 3-year deal. I think that's the exact thing that the New York Giants should do moving forward. Make sure that they go ahead and bring Micah McFadden into the fold long term. But moving on to the next extension candidate, let's flip to the offensive side of the ball. Let's talk about offensive tackle Jermaine Eluemunor. Eluemunor is entering the final year of his contract. He only signed a 2-year deal with the New York Giants in 2023. Or actually 2024, last offseason. That was his first season with the New York Giants last year. It was a 2-year, $14 million contract. And at the time, Alex and I praised that contract and said it's an absolute bargain, or at least it could look like one if he plays well on it. And so far, it does look like a bargain. $7 million per season for a starting offensive tackle is almost unheard of in this NFL. And the fact that Jermaine Eluemunor signed that deal and then played like a starting caliber offensive tackle tells you that the Giants did get really good value on that contract. But now, entering the second year of that deal, again, it's a similar situation to Micah McFadden. If Jermaine Eluemunor plays well this season, his market value is going to increase probably pretty significantly because of how premium of a position offensive tackle has become. Now, it used to be traditionally left tackles get paid more than right tackles, but in this modern NFL where each team has 2 great pass rushers and they line up on either side of the ball, the left side or the right side, both tackle positions are premium at this point, and they both get paid a similar rate. And so as a result, Jermaine Eluemunor is not going to take any discount for being a tackle on the right side versus the left side. And again, if he plays well this season, 2026, he could command $10+ million per year on his new deal. In fact, he probably already can command pretty close to that since he's already at $7 million per season. And the Giants just signed a backup in James Hudson III, who is very clearly a backup player, I think at around $6 million per season, something close to that. So with James Hudson making that money, Jermaine Eluemunor's contract looks like even more of a value considering he is a firm established starter. And again, he is, getting up there in age, perhaps. I think he's in his 30s at this point, but he's still got plenty of time left on the table, a lot left in the tank. Yeah, 29 years old going into the season, or 29 at signing, so 30 going into the season. Jermaine Eluemunor still has several years left to go. And I think that he is a player who has a few reasons to be here long term. Number one, I think that he's a great character and personality. He's very engaging with Giants fans on social media, but he's also just a fantastic leader on the field and in the locker room. Very outspoken with the media, but in a very supportive manner for his teammates. And I think that all of that really transcends what it means to be a New York Giant. I think that Jermaine Eluemunor really wears that on his sleeve and is very proud of his Giants, of being with the New York Giants. He's got tremendous Giants pride. And I think that those are the kind of players, again, similar to McFadden and elevating young player, the guys who love being a New York Giant are the guys that you want to extend. Jermaine Eluemunor, again, just a great teammate and a great player who puts a lot of work in and has really been dealt a pretty bad hand since he's been here. I mean, last season, the Giants signed him to be a right tackle. The entirety of the summer, he practiced with one position, which was right tackle. And then 9 weeks into the regular season, Andrew Thomas goes down to an injury, and they say, hey, Jermaine, I'm sorry, but now you're playing left tackle. And his play did suffer as a result. If you guys remember, through the first 5 weeks of the season, the Giants' offensive line was playing some pretty good football. Jermaine Eluemunor had a lot to do with that. Through the first 201 pass blocking snaps of his season last year, he didn't surrender a single sack. That was the most pass blocking snaps with 0 sacks allowed among all offensive tackles to open the year, according to Pro Football Focus last season. That was through the first 5 weeks. So Eluemunor was playing low-key at an elite level through the first 5 weeks of last season, at least as a pass protector. And then obviously the Giants' offensive line started to deal with some injuries. Then Thomas went down. He switched to the left side in week 10, and really everything got derailed and fell apart from there. So Jermaine Eluemunor, I think the key to him really boosting his value and getting the most out of him from the Giants' perspective is keeping him at right tackle. And that's obviously dependent on Andrew Thomas and whether or not he can stay healthy this upcoming season, which has definitely been a struggle for him over the last 2 years. But if we do get a healthy Andrew Thomas this year and Jermaine Eluemunor can continue to play at right tackle, and if he continues to play at a high level, he'll get paid. And I think that the Giants should get out ahead of this the same way that I said with McFadden. This is one of those players that before he goes out there and balls out in 2025, the Giants should go ahead and extend him before his contract elevates too much. Because I do think that starting offensive tackles in this league, even a right tackle who's 30 years old, I mean, Eluemunor could seek north of $15 million per season if he plays well this upcoming year. But if the Giants sign him now, they can definitely get him underneath that price tag, maybe in that 10 to 12 range. So really like Eluemunor. And while I think that, moving to the left side of the line kind of hurt him last season because he was playing in a position that he didn't have a ton of comfortability and practice with last year, I do think that the ability to make that switch and still play at a competent level, he was competent. He was fine at left tackle, just wasn't as good as he was at right tackle. The ability to make that switch is very valuable. And also considering the other versatility that he has, he can play right tackle at a high quality starting level. He can play left tackle. He also could play both guard spots. Eluemunor does have experience in his NFL career playing right guard and presumably could flip to the left side as well. So just a very versatile offensive lineman, dependable offensive lineman who plays through injuries, is out there through thick and thin, is always leading the team, and always has the ability to find his way onto the field due to his versatility. Just a player that I think the Giants should keep around for as long as possible. Again, he's 30 years old already, but he doesn't look like he's slowing down. Doesn't look like he's planning on retiring anytime soon. This is a player that I think the Giants should try and get under contract for at least another 2 years moving forward. But moving to my third extension candidate, staying on the offensive side of the ball, let's talk about Wan'Dale Robinson and our expectations for him moving into 2025. Again, another player who's gotten better every single year. If you remember back in 2022 when he was a rookie, who the Giants drafted in the second round, he had his breakout performance versus the Lions that season, put up 99 receiving yards in that game, and in the same game, tore his ACL. So was gone for the rest of the year, only played in 6 games that season, but did bounce back in 2023. It was a disaster season for the Giants, but he put up 60 receptions, 525 yards, and 1 touchdown. Definitely started to show progress and improvement. 4 receptions per game, 35 yards per game. Is a player that showed progress in the second season of his career, 8.8 yards per reception. Now, last year he had his best season, but there's a little bit of a caveat to it that I'll explain. He put up a career high 699 yards. He also put up a ridiculous 93 receptions and was targeted an insane 140 times and put up a career high 3 touchdowns. But his yards per reception fell to 7.5. His yards per game still was only around 41.4, which is okay, but nothing spectacular. And his average depth of target was a career low of 4.8. And so I think that when you look at the usage of him last year is where things get tricky. I think that Wan'Dale played well, and I think that he did the best that he could given the situation that he was in. But generally speaking, I think that the way that the Giants utilized him was limiting. Wan'Dale is a very small target. He's only 5'8". He's got a tremendously small wingspan, and as a result, he is a little bit difficult to target and push downfield. But I do think there have been instances where he's gotten a little bit vertical. He has made some plays downfield, but unfortunately, the Giants just haven't put him in position to make those plays often enough. And what I think that Wan'Dale Robinson is really good at is creating yards after the catch. In 2023, he averaged 4.8 yards after the catch per reception. The season prior, as a rookie, he averaged 5.5 yards after catch per reception. It fell all the way down to 3.9 this last season. And even though he broke 9 tackles, which was a career high according to Pro Football Reference, his yards after the catch per reception did drop. And I've talked about this many times, but I'm going to make this example again. The Giants quarterbacks last year just could not hit receivers in stride. And Wan'Dale Robinson, being a guy who operates close to the line of scrimmage on a lot of flats and drags and quick slants and bubble screens, things of that nature, those are plays that are designed, those are routes that are designed to get the ball into the receiver's hands quickly so that he can turn upfield and create yards after the catch. But if the ball is not in stride, if it's behind the receiver, if it's inaccurate, and they need to slow down to make that reception or stop completely to haul it in, they're not going to have the opportunity to create those yards after the catch because they're going to be so busy creating the catch, and then somebody is going to go ahead and tackle them as soon as they make it. So that resulted in a lot of opportunities for Wan'Dale that were taken away from him by poor quarterback play and inaccurate passes. Had those balls been in stride and he could turn the upfield, he would have created more yards, and his yards per reception and his yards after catch per reception wouldn't have been so low. And so I think looking ahead to 2025 now, with Russell Wilson under center, a quarterback who maybe isn't the most efficient passing over the middle, maybe isn't the best short passer in the world, but is definitely an elite deep ball passer. Still, though, knows how to get the ball accurately to his receivers and hit them in stride. I think Wan'Dale is going to have his best season to date. I think his target share is going to drop because I think that Darius Slayton's ability to get vertical is going to earn him more targets from Russell Wilson, a deep passer. But I think that lower targets and maybe even lower receptions, but more yards per reception and definitely more yards after catch per reception because of Russell Wilson throwing the ball in stride for Wan'Dale and allowing him to make plays after the catch. I think he's going to become a more explosive weapon in the Giants offense this year, and I think he's going to put up career numbers as a result. So I think that Wan'Dale is probably going to play well enough this season to earn a contract that probably prices him out of the New York Giants range in the 2026 offseason. So if they want to extend him, realistically, they should try and get that done ASAP. Among all 3 of these extension candidates that I've mentioned, the one who I think has the most potential to see their wage exponentially increase is Wan'Dale Robinson, because I do think he's going to play a lot better and create a lot more explosive plays with Russell Wilson as his quarterback. And I think that his contract in 2026 could be akin to the one that Darius Slayton just signed, which was 3 years, $36 million. That's $12 million per season. And with the Giants already paying Darius Slayton $12 million per season, and also having Malik Neighbors on the roster with an extension looming in several years from now, Neighbors is going to get paid probably close to $40 million whenever he gets his extension, maybe more depending on inflation. But with the Giants knowing that they're going to have a lot of money tied up into this receiver position long term, it might not be realistic for them to give another $12 million per year to the position to Wan'Dale Robinson, who ultimately is a slot receiver whose target share is never going to be as impactful as an outside guy necessarily. He is a limited player. He's only 5'8". I'm not saying that slot receivers can't be extremely impactful. I mean, look at Chris Godwin and some of these other top slot receivers in the league, but Wan'Dale just is a little bit limited in his skill set, albeit a very good player. And so I do think that if he plays well this season, ends up getting Khalil Shakir money, $13.3 million per season, the Giants might not view that as value, as a good value signing on a long-term extension. So I think that they should try and get Wan'Dale done sooner rather than later if they feel like he should be here long-term. But ultimately, I think instead of paying 12 to 13 million to a limited 5'8" slot receiver like Wan'Dale in free agency, the Giants should cough up an extra 8, pay $20 million per season to a more elite player. I don't know if 20 million is getting you an elite player in free agency at the receiver position, but in terms of getting an outside guy who can put up 8 touchdowns per year, you might get that out of $20 million per season. So I do think that's something to consider. the value of Wan'Dale as a limited slot receiver versus potentially paying up just a little bit more to get an outside guy with more potential in the free agency next offseason. It's something to consider. But I really do like Wan'Dale. And like I said, I have pretty high expectations for him this year. I think he's going to have a career year. And as a result, I think he's going to get paid more than maybe Giants fans currently expect in the 2026 offseason. So I'm really excited to see what he's able to do this year. Maybe I'm totally off base and wrong here. Maybe I've misread and misjudged him as a player. But I do think that in terms of creating yards after the catch, the Giants have a lot of guys who can do that. Theo Johnson's pretty good at that from the tight end position. I think Malik Neighbors is spectacular at that when he's able to get the ball in stride and on time. He can create insane plays after the catch. And I do think that Robinson has similar abilities to create some yak, but just hasn't had the proper opportunities. So hopefully this season with Russell Wilson throwing the ball, we can see Wan'Dale Robinson create some more yards with the ball in his hands and break some more tackles. Now, before I wrap up here, those were the 3 extension candidates that I mainly wanted to discuss. But I wanted to throw out some honorable mentions as well, just guys to keep an eye on. Other players from that 2022 draft class that are entering the final year of their deal and could potentially be up for extension include Dane Belton, Evan Neal, and Cordell Flott. Now, quickly, Dane Belton is a player that I think could earn a pretty cheap extension from the Giants if he plays well this season. He's free safety 3, right? Like he's the 3rd safety on the depth chart, but he has been a versatile player and he's been an ascending player similar to McFadden, has gotten better every single season, and he had a spectacular spring that we've talked about him a lot, forcing a bunch of turnovers at OTAs and minicamp. I think that Belton could sneakily play well this season and earn an extension with the New York Giants, but I also could see him being a player who doesn't get enough opportunities with the Giants, leaves in free agency for a situation that gives him more playing time, and then ultimately he could end up becoming a really good player elsewhere. That seems like a likely career path for Belton, although I hope that's not the path he takes, because I think that he is a very talented player, and I would like to see him remain with the New York Giants. But I think it's going to depend on how much he ends up playing this year, what his snap count is, and what he does in the snaps that he receives. Because so far, he's really came to play every time he's gotten a snap share that's worthwhile. He just hasn't seen the field enough to really develop himself into a long-term piece for the Giants. But the potential is there. And then for Evan Neal, I really think it's very unlikely that he earns an extension with the Giants. I think that he's pretty much nearing the end of his time in New York. It's been a tumultuous time, and now he's viewed firmly as a backup. Last year, he started the season out as a healthy scratch for the Giants. He got onto the field as a result of a bunch of injuries. He honestly played some pretty decent ball at right tackle last season for the Giants, but now they've transitioned him to guard. They're hoping that at left guard, he can make something of his career, but likely in a backup capacity. And considering he was drafted here to be a franchise offensive tackle, and now he's falling into a backup role, he's probably going to look for a change of scenery in 2026 if I had to bet on it. But if he does end up getting into the starting lineup this season, if he plays at a high level, I could see the Giants handing him a prove-it 1-year deal in 2026. It's totally possible, and I won't rule it out. I just think it's incredibly unlikely. And then Cordell Flott. This is a sneaky one because Cordell Flott was practicing as the CB2 with the starters last season, not last season, but in the spring alongside Deonte Banks. The two of them were rotating into the starting lineup, indicating that there is an open position battle at CB2. And so we got to keep an eye on that going into training camp because that's when position battles really intensify. But let's kind of walk through a hypothetical where imagine this regular season, Deonte Banks continues to struggle, gets benched, Cordell Flott takes over as the starter and plays at an above average level. The Giants are going to extend him in the offseason. So while right now he's looked at as a backup guy and has not established himself as a starter by any means, and definitely hasn't earned an extension with the Giants, by this time next year, he could be playing on an extension, depending on how things shape out with Deonte Banks. If Banks continues to struggle, looks really poor again this year, and Flott ends up taking over and playing some good football, then I could definitely see the Giants saying, hey, this is a homegrown talent that we've developed over the course of 4 years. He's gotten better every single year, and now I think that he's really ready to take on a starting role. We're going to go ahead and pay him. I think that it could be an affordable contract as well for Cordell Flott, since this would only be 1 season as a starter if he wins the starting job. But again, a lot of what I'm saying is hypothetical. It's a lot of ifs here, but just a player to keep an eye on as a potential extension candidate if he plays well this season. And the last two that I'll throw out there for you, and these guys are really honorable mentions. Bobby Okereke is not entering the final season of his contract. He's entering the second to last year of his deal. But if he plays well, continues to be a good player, I could see the Giants getting an extension done for him sooner rather than later, not letting him play out the entirety of his contract, but maybe going into next offseason, they say, hey, we don't want him entering the final year of his deal. We want to make sure that he's got some extra years attached because he's such a good leader and a really good and consistent player for us. So I really like Okereke. Giants seem to like him too, although there was that random rumor and report earlier this offseason that didn't seem to go anywhere, indicating that maybe they didn't like him. I think that they do, and I think he's a good player. So keep an eye on him. And the same goes for Kayvon Thibodeau, not entering the final year of his deal, technically entering the final year of his rookie contract, but the Giants did pick up his fifth-year option. But keep an eye on him. If he does perform well this season, knowing that he's got the fully guaranteed fifth-year option on his contract in 2026, the Giants could potentially lower that cap hit by extending him past 2026, and that could become an option for them. So keep an eye on how Thibodeau performs this year, now in this new look defense with Carter alongside him and Burns and Lawrence, of course. We talked a lot about this defensive line, but Thibodeau is a guy who's definitely playing to earn an extension. Could that come sooner rather than later? We'll predicate on how he performs this season. But that's the breakdown, guys. Those are the Giants' top extension candidates as we head into the 2025 season. Once again, training camp right around the corner. Stay tuned to the channel. We have some really exciting announcements on the way in terms of our 25K special. I haven't really given you guys a big proper thank you in one of these episodes for the 25,000 subscribers, but it's because we're planning something big and special for it. So stay tuned for that, and definitely stay tuned for other announcements. We might end up going to training camp, so we'll keep you guys posted about that. Really excited, of course, to continue talking Giants throughout the summer. Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel if you're new, ring the bell so you don't miss the episode, and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. Listen to Apple or Spotify, make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, I'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go New York Giants.